Is it on now? Yes. Thank you very much. Thanks for the introduction. It's great to be here. And it's a special thing for me to be here. I'm born in Zenica in Bosnia, and I left Bosnia, as many others, Bosnia-Herzegovina, for about approximately 25 years. And today I'm working as a head of sustainable finance for the biggest Nordic bank called Nordea. And we are in the business of sustainability for one simple reason. It makes sense and it brings us a lot of revenues, e.a. a lot of money. So when you listen to the speaker before on the facts, and I don't know Ola is still around, but for us bankers, we are very simple people. It's all about getting the facts to work together to provide good results and good revenues for us. Sustainability has become a part of Nordea's business for approximately 10 years ago. And the core element of how we develop sustainable finance in Nordea is to integrate environmental, social, and governance issues into the way how we make investment decisions. Probably many in our audience and many around the world would wonder why this is the case. Well, my friends, it's a case that the companies that we invest in, and we invest approximately 7,000 companies around the world, and we have a balance sheet that is bigger than GDP of Sweden, which means that we manage and invest and lend huge amounts of money, is actually aligned in a way how sustainable development goals can pose both risks and opportunities for our business going forward. What does it mean from sort of investment point of view? In order to be very factual, we've been looking in a way for the last 5 years, how do the revenues and performance of the companies that we invest in on the behalf of the sustainability as being one of the core elements of our investment policies, how does it pay off? In the latest performance reviews that we've done last year, the companies that are developing their business opportunities, their products and services and their processes towards sustainability, addressing these challenges in the way how they manage their operations, are 44% more better investments from a money perspective than companies not doing that. From a banking perspective, why this is interesting, you see, the banking industry since 2008 is trying to find a stable way of how to manage, invest and lend money all around the world in order to sustain the growth over time. The growth is needed for the societies to grow, it's needed for the banks, it's absolutely needed for a lot of these billions of people getting into the warmth of the middle class world that Ola was talking about. But it's also a great opportunity for us. All of the 17 goals, sustainable development goals, are in one way the opportunities, because the companies that develop solutions, products and services going forward will be the companies that will be the future winners. And we as a bank, as investors, we want to be part of that development and enable that transition by providing capital to companies that are both sustainable and profitable over time. So that's the sort of the part that I wanted to develop from Nordea point of view. Why we do it, what are the results, and also in what way we operate this. You have to bear in mind that we have 30,000 employees, we have 11 million clients, and I said again, the balance sheet of Nordea is bigger than Swedish GDP. So it's a lot of money that we talk about. But when we go back to Bosnia, I was a bit surprised listening to some of the speakers before, because somehow being born here and working all around the world and seeing the prerequisites for the growth in the countries that are in similar situation as Bosnia, I'm a bit stunned by the fact that the elephant in the room, which is related to development of Bosnia going forward, especially from financial point of view, is not mentioned. But I will be, being a banker, I will be very simple, so I'll mention some of these things. A couple of years ago, we had a look at a couple of different sectors in Bosnia from investment point of view. And we went through the sort of a parts of documentations and the legal issues related to the country. We also made a couple of visits into the country to try to understand the context of the operations here, to understand the context of Bosnia in the context of I would say, a wider region, because you can't financially look at the Bosnia's development isolated as one country. We need to see it in a regional perspective. And one of the core reasons why we have not decided to make any investments in Bosnia is following. The corruption being institutionalized in many cases, not in Balkans, but in Bosnia in particular, is still a big problem for us, because we don't get the information we need in order to make investment decisions that over time will create stability we need to even bring more money. The rule of law and also the way how the laws are drafted, followed, and also implemented. It's quite unstable from our perspective, which is creating also a struggle for investors to bring about the change and also bring the resources and capital into the country that we believe over time will contribute to the development of Bosnia, but also will be a good revenue, a good investment for us. And the third thing that we find extremely annoying and very difficult from an investment point of view is the presence, still 25 years after the war, of very strong political discontext with the European Union and also with the developments in different parts of the world when it comes to how the countries are run from political point of view, predictably over time in order to attract capital, but also in order to attract, I would say, a long-term development into the countries that is needed. So these are the three things from our experience that have led to the fact that we still are viewing the opportunities in Bosnia and Herzegovina as being extremely interesting, but in a lack of these 3 or 4 very key things for us going forward, we are still struggling finding the way how we can channel capital into this space. As you probably know, Sustainable Development Goals, what do Sustainable Development Goals have to do with this? You see, in many places in the world, and I have 160 traveling days around the world, and I have visited companies and I think governments from China all the way to Argentina. One of the things is very interesting. The lack of transparency, the increased corruption, and also the way how the country is managing its history have a significant importance for the way how the capital and how investments are made in that particular country over time. As a bank, as a financial institutions, we believe that enabling this transition to sustainable future together with our clients and partners is a key prerequisite for us as a bank to be here next 40 years. But we are not in a business of making investments in the countries and in the businesses that are not transparent, they are not taking their responsibilities seriously, and where we can actually, over time, lose money, and we have many examples of that. And on the top of that, I think you should just bear in mind that number, Ola was talking about the numbers. The companies operating in the countries where the rule of law, transparency levels are high, corruption levels are low, are better performing over time, they are more stable investments, and they're actually creating a much, much better environment, not only for the governments, but actually people living in the country. From sort of a broader financial perspective, I think it should be mentioned within the Sustainable Development Goals context. The European Union has recently launched the Action Plan for Sustainable Finance within a European level. There are 4 levels of legislative proposals on European level regarding sustainable finance for all the banks operating in the European Union, basically indicating for banks that sustainable development goals, sustainability as the key element of financing in investments will need to be taken into account when we make our investment decisions. This meaning, especially for a country like Bosnia and Herzegovina, and I would mention some of the other countries in the Eastern Balkan region, this will mean that investors in principle, and I will sort of like to remind you on that, and I'm sorry that the politicians have just left, will not be able to attract capital going forward without showing clearly to all of us investors in what way are these risks managed. This is not a game anymore of financial industry choosing to do so. It's more, we are moving into the legislative regulatory environment where the financial players will be regulated on how we invest capital all over the world. And on the top of that, we will be forced to be transparent to our customers and beneficiaries about how that capital is managed in the companies and in the countries where we invest in. So we are moving into the space, as Ulla was talking about, that is becoming better, a bit more complex. But for us, going forward, the sustainability and sustainable development goals are becoming the key element, basically, to grow our own business, to invest, but also prerequisite for the countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina and many others to develop in much faster way, which much more coherent way going forward, being far more transparent, working much more vigilantly on fighting the corruption and showing what measures are taken. So these are the things that I think from development perspective you can see on the facts that life improvement in Bosnia has increased and all of these things. But being here, understanding the context, reading the newspapers, talking to normal people, driving taxi, pensioners not having enough food, you actually understand where this country is. And I think it's extremely important if you want to collect and attract capital, which is available around the world. Just give you a number. In order to address climate change all over the world, we need to channel $167 trillion into climate solutions around the world. It's a huge amount of capital. That capital will not come from a public place, it will come from the private place. It will be channeled into the countries, solutions, where companies are providing information to investors. They are transparent in the way how they manage that. They are not corrupt, and they're actually long-term oriented, which is all of these elements are extremely important to get the capital in. So from financial point of view, Nordea and I think many other parties in the European Union are more than prepared to have a dialogue with a number of parties, not only in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but many other places, about how we, with the capital flows we have, how can we increase transparency, increase the measures that need to be taken on a federal level, on a state level, on a corporate level against corruption, so we can actually create a more stable environment for investments going forward. I think, if you ask me personally, I think Bosnia and Herzegovina has a great opportunity going forward, but not in a context of one country, just as itself. I think it's a regional context that is extremely interesting from an investment point of view, as much as it's interesting in Nordic countries where Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland were all cooperating over the time, creating dynamics, creating trust between them in order to exchange services, products, use the markets in a smart way. And this is something that Bosnia and Herzegovina needs to start thinking about. We need to see a country like Bosnia and Herzegovina from the lenses of the European Union, as a European country operating in the region and being more preoccupied about how to develop future for its young population, future for the people who want to stay actually in this country to live, because apparently many young talented people are leaving this place. And that's not good. It's not good for the economy, it's not good for the investments. And that's something that is worrying us as well, where we see the numbers, and numbers related to that are quite staggering. So from the context of regional context, Bosnia in a regional European context has a great opportunity to develop. But please bear in mind that this will not take place unless some ground structures, institutionalized structures are changed in order to address this. I'm sorry to be such a sort of a negative on this one, but being an investor, being a banker, you have to excuse me, I'm quite simple. I'm all about the investments and performance. I want to get out the money, but I will not invest in the way that it's actually contributing to increased corruption, less transparency, and less regional conflict. That's not the way how the banks will operate going forward. So with that, I would like to sort of leave it over to moderator to invite the panel, and then maybe we can kick off that. Thank you very much.